My buddy who would just put in like a religious slip to go to the chapel or what, because you got out of the cell. We're on lockdown, maybe we had yard once a day, maybe, right? But we're in our cells most of the time. So he would go behind the wall and be able to go to religious services, pass notes, drug deals and all that. And so he was going to the rabbi service and he was the only one there. And he told me, he was like, hey, can you come? Because I'm feeling kind of weird and awkward. I'm just the only person there, right? At the Jewish services, right? And so I'll go there. He's like, yeah, do your thing. Meaning he wanted me to argue. And I thought about it. I was like,
Welcome back to another episode of Inspiration for the Nation. This episode is incredible because Yehuda is one of the most transformative people I've ever met in my life. We would go through how in the world he came to Orthodox Judaism when a few years before that, well, many years before that, before he was in jail, he was a gang member, violent. How did he become one of the sweetest, nicest Jewish people I've ever met? Well, you're going to hear all about his journey in this episode. This episode is a memory of Shem David ben Yaakov Shlomo as well as Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe. You will hear about Esrog Shopper, the place to get your Esrog, Hatzalah ear, where $18 and boom, you could help get a Sefer Torah for one of the most amazing Hatzalahs out there. Also, you're going to hear about the incredible opportunity that you have before going into Yom Kippur. No spoilers, you're going to hear about that. And you can also hear about Twillery, my favorite clothing brand that I've been rocking and my wife has been loving as well. Here is my conversation with Yehuda. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Okay, it took us a while to get here, but we're finally here after a flight. Flat tire, some good holy schnitzel. Dr. Yehuda Pryce, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great. And you have an awesome community. Like we get a flat tire and random people just hop out of the car to help us. Right?
They're really nice. They seem like the type. I took out my phone to take a video. I don't think they wanted to be video.
Yeah, they wanted to do it. They just wanted to do the mitzvah and no recognition, right?
Right. Yeah. Classic. Very classic mitzvah doers. So could you take us back to when you were a kid and what your childhood was like?
Okay, my childhood, I won't want to say a regular sort of childhood. I grew up lower middle class, I would say. There's gangs in the neighborhood, but I could avoid it if I wanted to, I guess. It was a little different sort of, I think the racial issue was the big thing for me. I was raised by a white stepfather. My mother immigrated from Sri Lanka. My father immigrated from Jamaica. But he wasn't really around as much. There's the whole divorce and custody issues. And I always felt like I didn't fit in, right? There wasn't a lot of like black kids in my neighborhood. There was a lot of sort of racial taunts that I would get from time to time. And that left me feeling kind of just out of place, looking to belong. I was the class clown, so I was able to make people laugh and all of that, right? But I just felt like I didn't belong, right? And I felt like there was something more to life than what was happening with my childhood.
At that point in your life, was religion a part of it or not at all?
No, religion didn't play a part of my life pretty much at all. So yes, nominally, right? My mom was raised Muslim in Sri Lanka. She converted when she came to America. I don't know if it was sort of a acculturation sort of thing. So JC wasn't really mentioned in the household. On certain of the holidays, would go to church, but nothing that resonated with me or impactful in any way. It was more of a cultural thing as opposed to something that I derived meaning or any sense of purpose or any sense of loyalty or whatnot to. So it didn't play a part.
Okay, so take us through your teenage years. Did it automatically get way better or get a little worse?
So got a lot worse, very, very worse. In my search for identity and just trying to belong and not necessarily having my own culture I was rooted to, my parents, they immigrated to America with no family with them. So it was just them. So I wasn't even connected to, like uncles, aunts, grandparents. I didn't have any of that. And I was looking to connect with who I was, especially since I was a lot of times singled out because of my race. And when I adopted the sort of stereotypes of this black macho with this bravado and this sort of gangsterisms or whatever that I was adopting, I sensed people started respecting me. Or fear, could have been a little mixture of both. And I felt important. I felt like I had some power. I felt, I mean, if we're talking about like people, I don't know how it was for you growing up, Yaakov, but when I'm thinking about like, what am I going to be in life? That was too abstract. I didn't know anybody really that looked like me and was successful that I could role model after, or I didn't see it. And so I had this ability to instantaneously get power, respect immediately, right? It's sort of instant gratification. So,
like what? What did you do that you were getting feared or respected?
I was fighting a lot, and that alone brings a lot of fear if you're willing to fight. And I was doing all sort of mischief. Just, you know, I started holding guns. I started robbing people. I started selling drugs. That was all part of my persona. I started hanging around with different sort of gang members. And then within that sort of subculture that I kind of just I went down a dark hole, let's say, right? And I'm in a subculture. And so I wasn't so much even as concerned about like the broader general culture anymore. It wasn't about me trying to fit in or belong into this like regular culture. It was the gang culture that mattered to me. And so that was the only sort of barometer of, was I doing right? And by right, I'm not talking about like morally and ethically how we might think, or is he a mensch? No, I'm thinking about like, does he not back away from fights or confrontations? Is he willing to go the extra mile when it comes to criminal exploits? And so that's what I gravitated to. And I found out that I did it well. And I had a lot of sort of criminal mentors that really took me under their wing. And I felt like I impressed them and I meant something to them. I don't know how real that was, right? I very much feel like I was being exploited. If I'm 16 years old and my best friend is 28, right? And getting me to do criminal exploits with them, I'm probably getting exploited, but I still felt like, look how cool I'm at. My best friend is riding around in an Escalade and allowing me to commit crimes. And I'm pulling up to the high school, or I'm pulling up to the neighborhood and to this different block. And I had that sort of prestige to me. And I felt important, and I felt powerful, and I felt like my life had some sort of purpose, even though, you know, in hindsight, it definitely was purposeless.
It's very interesting. At that time when I guess you're breaking out and I guess morphing into someone that I guess your mother or father didn't raise, was your family giving you pushback of like, wait, what was your name at that? It wasn't Yehuda. What was your name at that?
My name was Omar at the time.
Omar.
Yeah.
Were they like, Omar, this isn't you. What are you doing?
Yes, they definitely. When I was 16 years old, my mother's house got shut up. I had a 10-year-old sisters, I believe at the time, 10 or 11-year-old. I had a brother, 11-year-old brother. They're like 1 year apart. So, a house getting shot up, my mom's vehicle getting shot up. I would go to juvenile hall. I was in and out of juvenile hall. The house would get robbed when I was when I was in juvenile hall. So there's all type, police would raid the house with dogs. There was, they were investigating me at different times. So there was always some sort of interaction with the police or something else going on. Me getting in trouble at school, me getting suspended. So yeah, there's a lot of pushback, but if I wasn't fearful of people shooting at me, right, why would I be fearful of my parents? And I guess, I know we talk about kibbut av v'em, right? Like that didn't resonate with me. I understood it in principle. So I always had a lot of respect for my mom. I know that's hard to, I didn't show it with my actions, obviously, but I was always like very respectful as far as my interactions with her, right? Very, just very kind, very gentle, and I try to keep a separate double life. So it wasn't like I was just doing it directly in front of her, but she grounds me and I'm sneaking out the window, or I am stealing my stepdad's vehicle and doing criminal exploits or whatever I was doing, right? And so there was pushback, but it didn't deter me whatsoever.
Was there like some form of satisfaction that came when you did a crime, or it was more just the persona that was the enjoyment?
So yes, it added to my persona and my, my prestige in this sort of criminal underworld. But yeah, there is satisfaction. I took satisfaction in being able to come up with clever ways to make money or do crime. And I took a lot of pride in some of the sort of like drug robbery. That was my main thing. I robbed drug dealers for a living. That was my main thing I did.
He's like a Robin Hood type of like, not stealing from the rich, but you're stealing from the drug guys,
Yes, I will say this very facetiously, but I used to kid and say, like, I'm helping out the community. I'm robbing drug dealers and giving them back. Right? Very facetiously, I'm saying that, right? Yeah.
That's very interesting. At what point did you hit rock bottom with these crimes?
So I don't know if I ever hit a rock bottom.
No.
Right? Oh. I was dedicated to what I was, right? I was a gangster. So, and I understood that it was going to be death or jail. I understood in the way that a teenager understands consequences, right? But I understood that who I was, that these were the sort of outcomes, right? I couldn't imagine myself in my 30s or even my late 20s. So I was going in and out of juvenile hall. I was taking cases to trial. I won. So that just like boosted up my reputation. I got arrested at the age of 19 for a robbery, which they gave me 20 years in enhancements, 10 years for a gun enhancement, 10 years for a gang enhancement, saying that the crime was done for the benefit of a gang, and then 4 years for the actual robbery. Nobody was hurt. I don't say that to minimize what I did, but just trying to let you understand, for a 24-year sentence. A lot of times when I say that, people are like, well, who did you kill? But then that's how they were giving out sentences back then, right? So it was my first time as an adult being charged with a crime, and I got 24 years. But prior to that, I was in the county jail fighting my case for 3 years. Like, I was facing life the way they do the gang enhancements in California. You could face life because of the gang enhancement. So I was running amok in the county jail. Like, I had this crazy strut, like this ridiculous strut, almost like I'm a handicapped strut that I used to walk around. It's like I'm just so like big, bad, and tough. And so now I'm in jail, and this is like, I don't know, I don't want to say the culmination of my career, so to speak, right? But I'm where I'm supposed to be, and I'm acting like I'm supposed to act as this person I claim to be, right? If I'm going to do something, I like to do it to the fullest extent possible. I don't like to play hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so it wasn't a rock bottom for me. And so when they gave me my 24 years, and my family was there crying when they gave me that sentence, and the judge said, essentially, well, I'm not going to give you life, right? I think you're young, you're smart. I gave a whole Martin Luther King, I have a dream speech at my sentencing. It was just long, and I was very loquacious and spoke to a lot of different things. And he gave me 24 years, not a life sentence. So that was good, I guess.
When he said 24 years, what like inside did you actually feel?
I think it was hard to conceptualize. I hadn't been alive that long, right? How does somebody who's not 24 years old like conceptualize being incarcerated for longer they've been alive? I wasn't going to, experience my 20s, my 30s. And then I also knew that going into prison with that much time, and I had multiple strikes because of the case, that there's a good chance I wouldn't make it out. So it was a lot. And so I think the feelings, which eventually, I guess, were tinged with some despair for sure, didn't fully set in until I went upstate. At the time when I was in the county jail, it was just like 24 years, like, wow. And maybe there was a little pride there too, right? Like, I got 24 years. I must be a gangster, like I walk it like I talk it. Right. And so yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot to process, and I don't think I processed it right. I drank a lot of alcohol in prison. I'm not saying that I felt like I was an alcoholic or anything like that, but I did a lot of things to not focus on the significance of what 24 years of being incarcerated meant.
So you mentioned that going upstate was another level? Yes.
So the first prison they sent me to was Pelican Bay State Prison. Now, I hope you're not familiar with that.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so it is a maximum security prison in California. it was like a 14-hour bus trip. They shackled me up. I was in a paper jumpsuit. It was the longest bus trip of my life. And I got to this prison where this is where like the top gangsters in California go, right? This is like, they're playing ball for real. They're playing ball for keeps. Like people are dying. People are getting stabbed. I remember and it's very racially segregated, right? People wonder why I'm not as sensitive to sort of, what do you call, microaggressions or sort of like, sort of implicit racism or anything like that. Not to say that it doesn't affect people and it doesn't matter, but just to say that it was like overt, explicit, I'm gonna stab you because you're black racism, right? And so everything was super segregated. You had the white supremacists, you had the Mexican mafia, you had the up north Mexican mafia, down south Mexican mafia, you had blacks, you had Bloods, you had Crips. And I remember when as soon as I got there, like the white supremacists and the southern Mexican mafia got into a riot and melee, and we were on lockdown for almost 4 months, right? And so I'm just in a jail cell, right, thinking, a lot of thoughts, a lot of thinking going on, right? But there were times when, like, we would know that if they opened up my door and there was a white inmate, and because the white supremacists ran what we call the white car, right? That if they were there, we would have to attack each other, right? And if somebody of a different race attacked another black, I would have to jump in. If I didn't jump in, right, to defend the black inmate, then I would be next. My own car, so to speak, would come and get me.
Whoa.
So I remember being in my jail cell, and I'm just giving you an example. There was a lot because that was my life. My adulthood was spent incarcerated. I remember that sort of situation and that in the air, like, all right, are they gonna open up my door? And I remember hearing my skinhead neighbors, right, the white supremacists, sharpening up knives in the cell next to me, right? And I'm like, I got strikes, I got multiple strikes. They open up this door, and these are some big guys, right? Like, they're like 6'3", 6'4", weighing a lot more than me, right? And I'm thinking, right, okay, even if I use a knife, I could get struck out and get life. If I don't, I might die. Even if I use it, these guys still will probably take me down. And then we had the correctional officers with mini 14s, and I could likely get shot. And so that was the sort of situation I was like in Pelican Bay, right? And that was just like an example of so many incidents I could go in there. But that's what I said. It was it was a different level than just the county jail.
I think when I was your age, I was like bugging out, which yeshiva in Israel should I go to? My life's so hard. And you're like in a jail cell, like literally, well, either I'll get life forever if I stab them, but if I don't, they'll kill me. It's going to sound like very cheesy and corny, but like legitimately this is like color war, but like it's the color of someone's skin, and it's an actual war that's going on over there. And
it was normal. And that's the thing about it. It wasn't like, oh, wow, what is going on here? I can't believe what's going on here. It's like, no, this is normal. This is total normal. And we got to make sure we win the war, or whatever war that happens to pop up. Right. Yeah. So it was crazy times.
So it was there at a point in that sentence where you're like turning to God to get you out of there, or did your relationship with Judaism happen in a different way?
So it's funny. I was adamant that I wouldn't use religion. I wouldn't become religious in prison because I felt like it was people who didn't have what it didn't have what it took to survive prison, used religion as a crutch. I actually started to explore Christianity, the religion I was supposedly connected to, just because I knew, well, I should probably know this stuff, especially if there's some sort of eternal component to it, right? And I'm claiming that this is what I'm about. And in prison, it's a lot of confrontational arguments. People are trying to prove you're wrong, a lot of debating, right? And so I'm like, let me learn what I'm saying I'm connected to and what I believe. And so I studied the Catholic Study Bible, just because it had extra books, right? I wanted to make sure I knew everything I did. And I read it, and it just wasn't for me. I'm like, and I kind of just turned away from religion altogether. And then it was more of an academic pursuit that I studied religion. I, studied some Buddhism. I read the Quran front to back. All types of different sort of things I was exploring, philosophy. And so that's what it was. I was actually, I don't want to say anti-religion. I wasn't anti-religious. I was I was, so this is what I called it, right? Is I called myself being agnostic and then perhaps like a deist, right? They don't necessarily go together, but it was that, well, did God exist? Well, there's no way of like scientifically proving it. So does it really matter? But I did, and this will be the sort of deism side of it, is that I did believe in some sort of spiritual power, but does this spiritual power like actually interact with me on my day-to-day life, right? And so conveniently, it didn't require me to be disciplined in any way or commit to anything, so I could kind of still do crime on the side and all that. So that was pretty much where I was at while I was at Pelican Bay State Prison until, and let me go back a little bit and say that different sort of like I would go to like J witness services and argue with the volunteers that would come in, right? Not argue just like just to harass somebody, even though it definitely was like a form of harassment, like, in retrospect, right? But it was more challenging their ideas. And I needed to hear like logical responses that made sense according to the tenets of what you believe in, right? So that's how I approached it. And I ran volunteers off. So people knew me in prison to be that guy. And so I remember my buddy who was a porter, meaning he cleaned the tier, the cell block. And he was telling me like, oh, you know what? They just hired a rabbi. And let me step back a little bit to let you know about prison life. There was somebody who was incarcerated who was Jewish who filed a lawsuit and won kosher meals in the state of California. So part of that lawsuit required the California Department of Corrections to have a rabbi at the prison where there's kosher meals, right? And if there wasn't, people could request a transfer if you were Jewish or that was your sincerely held belief, right? And so people started putting in like, I'm Jewish, even white supremacists, I'm Jewish, transfer me, right? And nobody wanted to be at Pelican Bay, right? So they said, we got something for you. They hired a rabbi. So this rabbi didn't have a congregation though, because like nobody was really identifying as Jewish.
He's like a Nazi over there who's like, yeah, I'm Jewish, give me the kosher meal.
Yeah, like kosher meals was like the big thing. And so they hired a rabbi, but he didn't really have a congregation because it wasn't like it was Jews really requesting a rabbi to come there because they wanted a rabbi. It was just like random people. And it was hard. And I'll put in a side note with this whole racial thing. It was hard because a lot of Jews who would present as white would have to automatically be associated with this white car that ran it, and they were ran by white supremacists. So there wasn't like, this is not like the feds where there's like, certain federal locations have like, Jewish population, there's people davening and all that. This was more so like people didn't want to identify as Jewish because guess what? The person running your whole car, your life essentially happens to have a swastika tattooed on them, right? So this was sort of situation. So no Jews there, and my buddy who would just put in like a religious slip to go to the chapel or what, because you got out of the cell. We're on lockdown. Maybe we had yard once a day, maybe. Right. But, we're in our cells most of the time. So he would go behind the wall and be able to go to religious services, pass notes, drug deals and all that. And so he was going to the rabbi service and he was the only one there. And he told me, he was like, hey, can you come? Because I'm feeling kind of weird and awkward. I'm just the only person there. Right. At the Jewish services. Right. And so I'll go there. He's like, yeah, do your thing. Meaning he wanted me to like to argue. And I thought about it. I was like, have I ever ran into somebody that was Jewish before? I remember telling my mom, like, I don't know anybody Jewish outside. She's like, what do you mean your doctors were Jewish? The person who delivered you was Jewish. All right. But I didn't consciously know anybody that was Jewish. And so I always heard about like Jewish people through other religions, through the lens of other peoples, but never, straight from a Jew, right? From the Jewish perspective. So I was intrigued as well, but I was ready for it. I was ready for an argument, and I was going to let the argument develop organically, like see what he said, and then just on my feet, like try to refute or try to challenge him. And so I went there, and this was a Reform rabbi. So this wasn't like I'm from now and all that, but this was just like a Reform rabbi. Wasn't trying to, push a particular type of Judaism or anything like that. He was just like welcoming of all. And I went there and I told him, I'm like, how do you believe in this? Or how do you believe in that? And he's like, look, we're not trying to really convert anybody, like just be a good person. That's all we ask, right? That's all we want people to be is good people. And if you look at Jewish history, you see Judaism was a work for the Jewish people. That was like a simple sort of statement he said like that. And then I in my me looking into that statement in order to argue, I analyzed that statement and then thought about it, right? Seeing the Jewish people through the lens of other peoples, right? Yeah, constantly getting persecuted, constantly having to go from place to place, right? Whole scale stealing of like Jewish culture, right? We call cultural misappropriation, like it's really happening, right? And they're still there, right? And so I didn't really have anything to like refute what he was saying, and it intrigued me. I said, all right, okay, let me check this out. Let me hear what you say. So it was more so just like exploratory, it wasn't, I felt lonely in a jail cell. Mm-hmm. I needed God. So let me become Jewish or look to Judaism. It was more so I'm my natural confrontational self, and I ran into a Jew, and there was some emes connected to that, to Yiddishkeit, right? And he allowed me, and the first book he gave me was, and I say that he was reformed to say that he gave me to be a Jew by Orthodox rabbi. That was the first book he gave to me. He wasn't like trying to get me to go to reform around. He gave me that book, and so that was my first glimpse into Judaism, and I was in my cell for most of my time, right? Again, it was level 4 lockdown, and I read a lot. So he'd give me a book.
How does it work with books? You could bring in any books you want?
No, you're allowed a maximum of 10 books. They have to get sent from the vendor, but you're able to check out books from like the chapel or the library, anything like that. So he would get books in. He had an easier way to get books in, right? Like, as a chaplain, you could just get books in, and there wasn't a robust Jewish library. There wasn't even a Jewish library. So like a lot of the books were like he bought for me, and then they just became part of the Jewish library. I was like the first person to read them. So I was reading a book every day or two, and he would just give me a new book. And then I fell in love. I quickly fell in love, and I fell in love. It's how do you describe something logically that's really an intuitive feeling, right? It's like a metaphysical reality of Hashem touching you in a particular way. I could try to put that, encapsulate in that words, but really I don't think the words do it justice. I felt compelled towards that, and the more I read, the more I fell in love quickly. And I wasn't with him too long. I was only there with like maybe a couple, 2-3 months after he was there, and then I went to a whole nother prison. So my journey of Judaism really started, gaining steam after I left that prison.
So interesting. We'll be right back for this week's episode, but let's get real for a second. Not everyone out there has the time, know-how, or mojo to venture out and hunt down the perfect esrog and lulav. Am I right or am I right? I mean, you might have tried it on your own only to feel completely overwhelmed by the whole process. I know I've heard stories of folks who walk into esrog market with really high hopes, but then they walk right back out, frozen and not really sure where to even begin. I have experienced that. And then there are those who used to be pros at it, picking out their sets like a boss and finding different stores and finding the best deal. But, life happens, and suddenly they're at a point where they just can't spare the time or energy for it really anymore. That's where esrogshopper.com comes to the rescue. I'm telling you, Esrog Shopper is like having your very, very own esrog shopping squad. They'll hook you up with exactly what you need, what you're looking for, down to the very nitty-gritty details like the brand, the color, the pitim, the price range, you name it, and they've got you covered, all through their super slick website that I love. And get this, if you're feeling a bit clueless and you have no idea what you want, they've got a choose for me option that works like a charm. I've personally used it last year. These folks are all about customer service, and they're there with you every single step of the way, making your experience really smooth and stress-free. You could literally give them a call if you don't know what to do or what to choose. Plus, the process is so darn easy that they'll deliver the most stunning set right to your doorstep, all up to the highest standards in the game. But wait, it gets even better. esrogshopper.com offers a mind-blowing 100% money-back guarantee if for some wild reason you're not completely thrilled with your order. Seriously, that's practically unheard of. How many people have that good customer service? Now, here's the real kicker. esrogshopper.com has been shaking up the game since 2017, making thousands of customers jump for joy. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead after you listen to this podcast and head over to esrogshopper.com right now. And for all Living L'Chaim listeners, don't forget to use code LL5 for an awesome 5% discount on your order. So happy shopping, folks, and get ready for the most unbelievable unbelievable sukkahs of your life. Warning, some people may come over to you in shul a little jealous of your esrog. I had that last year. And you know what? It's kind of worth it. It is so great. Great pricing, great people. I love them. esrogshopper.com, code word LL5. Now back to this week's episode. Could you remember like a specific, I don't know if it's a moment, maybe it's a passage, maybe it's an idea with Judaism that you, when you're like looking back and you're like, wow, that idea is very beautiful.
So it may have been just in contrast to what I was around, right? I started recognizing, right? So I should say that I was trying to improve who I was prior to me meeting that rabbi, meaning I was around. It's different when I was participating in a subculture on the streets. That's what we call the free world. People in jail, they call it the streets. I was on the streets. I could I'm around my family. I'm not necessarily a gangster around my family. I could go to school. I'm not necessarily a full-time gangster at school, right? And then I could dip into the subculture. But there I was just around it all the time. And it started to lose its, it didn't do it for me anymore. I kind of realized that, we were all just a bunch of losers, right? Not to, just say it like that, right? But yeah, we were, what were we doing here, right? And so I'm like, there got to be more. And I seen some inconsistencies, of people. We were participating in our own destruction and blaming others, right? And it didn't resonate with me. So I felt like the only thing I could do in life, I can't work towards building a career too much or anything like that. Was I could improve myself, right? And so that was already in my mind, right? That was already in my mind. And so when I became involved in Judaism or became exposed to it, it was that it was concrete actions I could take and steps I could take to build a relationship with, the source of all being, right? And so this abstract concept required actual it required sort of behaviors of me as opposed to, it's just a thought or a set of beliefs I feel about, right? That was how I felt my former religion. I could just have some beliefs and it didn't require certain actions, right? And there's that, I think it's Shavisti Hashem Lenegdi Salmon, right? I keep Hashem before me always, right? That's, David Melech, right? That's what, it started off Shulchan Aruch, and to me that just resonated and hit it home, right? Because it required me to, in everything I do, even if I'm in a jail cell, right? Hashem's there, Hashem is there, in the sort of darkest, most violent, most me cut off from my family, my friends, my dreams, my hopes, my aspirations, but Hashem is there, and I have ability to actually connect with Hashem in that sort of space. And to me, again, it's an intuitive experience, right? I felt drawn to this, but to me, that just made sense. It was emes. And so I think that's what really did it for me more than anything. And the more I read, the more it made sense to me, the more I felt it. And all the sort of research and everything I was doing with all the other religions, all the other topics, all the other subject matter didn't do anything. It just didn't do anything like Judaism did to me. And this was without a community. This was just me and Hashem.
Really beautiful. As you're, I guess, falling in love with Judaism, you also met your partner while you were in prison. Is that correct, or am I skipping?
That is correct. So yes. So fast forward a little bit. I went to another prison. So I was in Pelican Bay, super maximum security. I went down just a notch. It was still a level 4. It was a little bit less security.
I didn't ask. Level 4 is the top level?
So
it's 4 out of 400? It's a baby prison. 4 out of 4.
Yeah, so level 1s, you might be fighting fires, right? You might be a level 1, you might be support. Certain crimes, right? If you have a violent crime, robbery is considered a violent crime. You have gang enhancements like I did, you're not going to necessarily qualify. And if you do, it's going to take you over a decade to get there, right? So I was on a level 4, 180 design, if you want to get specific, people want to Google it, right? So I went to a 270 design, which is a little bit more open, but still considered a maximum security prison. But that little less degree of security is when I was introduced to cell phones. So everybody needs a cell phone. I'm sure you have your cell phone on you.
It's right over here.
Yeah,
I have it right in front of me.
So I'm incarcerated. So this, imagine we use payphones. You get you have to sign up for to use a payphone, collect calls, 15-minute calls. people have to, put money on their phone, on the phone, whatever account to accept this. You're not calling a lot of people. You don't know what's going on in the world. You're super isolated.
And what year is this around?
This was, so I went to this prison, I believe it was in 2010 is when I went to this prison. I was incarcerated, I first got incarcerated in 2002. And so I got introduced to I had a flip phone, right? So as soon as I got introduced to the flip phone, I just thought it was just the greatest thing in the world, right? When I left the streets, flip phones were coming out. There's no such thing as texting. Nobody was texting. At least I didn't know anybody was texting, right? I remember a color screen that just came out, just a color. It didn't take photos. Didn't even take photos, but it was color. Like, wow, it's like, that's, so now, I got a flip phone and it texts. So I had to purchase one. And it's weird that there's a lot of people like, they would, tell the correctional officers, there was people robbing people for phones. It was really a hide and seek type of game. And so I kind of started staying more to myself in order to protect my phone.
How do they not, hold on. I mean, maybe because I'm like thinking of like, I guess the movies that I saw in the past with prison, but like you go to the airport, they spot your phone in a second with the metal detectors and stuff. Like they don't have that there. Like how's it? Sounds like easy in a certain way to get a cell phone in.
Well, especially back then, it was a lot easier. Yeah, they have metal detectors. So when they do major searches, they have cell phone sniffing dogs and that. But the main thing is, one, if you're not like selling drugs or doing stuff specifically to bring a lot of heat to you, during regular searches, they're not bringing out like metal detectors, not bringing drug sniffing dogs, right? And so, and we are very good, we being those of us who are incarcerated, didn't want to include you in this, right? We're good at finding little stash spots in the cell. So I had all types of different ones. We try and we know like, oh, you know what, they caught this one in this cell block. All right, well, can't use that one anymore, right? So I had it. I did at that particular prison. I beat a major search too. There's even ways around that, right? And so I had a cell phone. I was on my cell phone most of the time. And that was when I was like, kind of, like looking about like just doing my Jewish research on this as much as you can. I don't know anybody that's Jewish. I have a cell phone. That's a flip phone. It's not a smartphone.
You're like texting Cha-Cha? Do you even know what Cha-Cha is?
No, I don't even know what
Cha-Cha was like, I don't know, 2000 and before 2010, I don't know, 2000.
Oh, you could just kind of ask random questions to it.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Who is Hashem, Cha-Cha? Like someone's Googling the answer.
Yes, I remember that. I thought that was groundbreaking when somebody told me about Cha-Cha. Yeah. So yeah, I got on Facebook, right? Facebook on a flip phone, so it's not like
right.
It is what it is, right? And so yeah, so cell phones, and I knew then, right? I was like, oh wow, this is like revolutionary. Like I could do my time where I could just go into my cell and then interact with the free world, right? Like have real conversations, see pictures and, just see what people are doing. And now I'm not just like stuck, like just completely by myself. So I vowed to myself, right? Now I'm not gonna say like a formal vow or anything like that, but I just told myself that I was going to do the rest of my time with a cell phone, right? Just because that's how significant it was to me. And I'd rather talk to people in the free world than people, as I said, it started losing that sort of luster of just being around the same sort of a bunch of characters all the time, right? I want to be connected to the free world. So cell phones was my thing. So then I got transferred to a lower security prison, a level 3, right? I didn't make it to fire camp, right? But I'm making moves right now. So I'm at a level 3. Yes. And so I met, it's your typical, isn't this a typical Jewish love story, right? Girl, a boy in prison meets a Jewish girl, right? Yeah, I know it's probably not your typical love story, a Jewish love story that is. But yeah, so my wife, she was raised she didn't necessarily, she wasn't always on the derrick, right? Dealing with me in prison, right? But she always believed in Hashem and knew that was, at the end of the day, right? That was emes, that was truth. And that was the life she wanted. When she was able to live that life, that's what she wanted, right?
So how do you guys get connected through?
So now I got a smartphone, right?
Ooh, okay.
I'm in a level 3, little less security. I got a smartphone. So like, this was like, right. And so I have a smartphone and, I was a rapper back in my day because everybody raps.
Do you have a rapper name?
I had a rapper name. It was Hydro, helping young delinquents resist oppression. It's not a name, it's a movement. That's how I marketed it. Right.
I don't know why I'm calling you Yehuda or Omar. We should go with Hydro. Way cooler name.
Yeah. So I was releasing, I released albums on like Google and iTunes.
I did not do enough research. I totally want to listen.
Yeah. Well, you don't necessarily need to listen. You don't need to know that side of me. Right, Yehuda. That's what you need to know, right? Okay. I used to be on like Instagram and kind of promoting and all that, right? And so So I'm on Instagram and like I'm still like practicing my like prison form of Judaism, right? I was at the time I was the Jewish chapel clerk. I was very dedicated. Taught myself, to daven in Hebrew and all that, but it still wasn't, true Judaism. One, I wasn't Jewish. Two, I wasn't in a Jewish, like a robust Jewish community. Like nobody was there were at this particular prison, there were Jews that were going to the Jewish chapel, but none of them were from. It wasn't that sort of vibe. So I was kind of still doing my own thing to a certain degree, though I knew that once I got out and I knew what it took, at least, right, to go into a Jewish community, that's what I wanted, but I didn't know if they're going to. I didn't know I was going to be accepted. It was a lot. There's a lot of self-doubt, and I wasn't scheduled to get released until technically last month. We'll talk about how that kind of changed. Okay. But so
wait a second, he escaped. Okay.
You get really exclusive interviews. Yeah, I think I was looking at Magen David hashtags, right? Star David hashtags on Instagram, right? Just looking at it, seeing what people, see that, right? I'm just looking, right? Because this is my exposure to people who are Jewish in Jewish life, right? And I came across this picture of this woman with a flag. She had a flag of Israel behind her, and I'm like, oh, she's beautiful. Awesome. And I just clicked like on the picture. It was nothing more. It wasn't like I was like, yeah, I'm going to marry this woman. This and that, or anything's going to possibly happen. She liked my picture back. We followed each other on Instagram, and that was pretty much it for maybe approximately like 6 months or so. And then you're probably not familiar with Instagram flirting. Yes, hopefully not, right? I'm testing you here. She would all of a sudden she started liking my pictures more than I liked back. And then we like quickly just had like a conversation. This was before DMs, meaning I couldn't private message her. You would just go to like an old picture that they post on Instagram and then comment on that. And then the person will comment back, and that conversation happened. She was like, just email me. And I told her to email me, and we emailed. She's like, just rather just talk, right? Just email things kind of weird. And then we talked. And right after that, we're almost immediately like a couple, as much as a couple could be. She lived in Canada. I was in America in prison, right? So, whatever that meant. But I did know like a week after, and maybe, right, because I was isolated. I didn't have a lot of contact with people in general, let alone women. But I did have like previous sort of relationships with different sort of women that I knew prior to this whole me going Jewish. And I remember that week, maybe a week after we were together, that I was like, yeah, I'm going to marry you. So I don't know how that's, possible. One, I'm not Jewish yet, and I want to live a Jewish life. So don't know how that's possible. And we live in 2 different countries, and Canada, like, they play hardball. They don't like people like me going over into the country, right? They have like strict standards as far as criminal activities. So didn't know how that was going to happen, right? But we were talking to each other every day. Like, I'm talking about like 4 or 6 hours at night, like all through the night. I'm talking to her on video chatting. She had a daughter from a previous marriage from when she lived in Israel. I met the daughter when my daughter Liel, when she was 3 years old. So we're video chatting. She's I want to say, so yes, I love my wife, right? I love my wife, Ariella. But her daughter left a super impact on me, right? I'm around a bunch of grown men. Then I had this sweet little girl that just looks at me like I'm just like the innocent person. Like, not that I'm just like some hardcore gangster with a whole body tatted or anything like that. Like, she's not looking at what I did or who I was or where I was at. She was just like, hey, seem nice. Yeah, my mom likes you. I like you, right? And so that really, I think that motivated me really down this path a lot more than was happening previous to that.
Wow. And then, okay, so then at what point did you see that there was a chance of you getting out earlier than what they originally sentenced you to?
So when I met my wife, when I met my girlfriend at the time, right, it was, I had about 9 years left to go. And I told her, I said, look, I got 9 years to go. She's like, oh no, maybe you could get out early. I'm like, I'm not trying to sell you a dream. Like, I really really like you, right? Like I got 9 years to go, right? I think she was 24 when I met her, right? I'm like, I got 9 years to go. I didn't know even this was gonna last, right? I got 9 years to go. Like, doesn't matter how much you care about something. Just like the simple logistics and reality of the situation might not make it happen. But she's like, no, I'm a diving. I'm a diving. You get out in half that time. And she was telling other people like, no, yeah, but we're hoping he gets out in half. And I was like, my love, I've not claimed that. I don't know why you're telling everybody that, right? And she's like, no. And then actually they passed a law. Well, what happened was the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that California prisons were so overcrowded that it constituted cruel and unusual punishment. So they were being pressured to reduce the population, or the feds were going to come in and take over, right? So they had to come up with different ways to like lower the population in a safe way. And so what they did is they passed what they call the youth offender bill. If the crime was committed under the age of 23, you were eligible for early parole. Doesn't mean you're going to automatically get released, but you had to show like what you did in prison, and you would be eligible for early parole. So that made it possible for me to get released early. I didn't know when that early parole board date would happen, because technically, even though I was eligible in law passed in 2015, went into effect in 2016, even though I was eligible because of the amount of time I did when it passed, they had until like 2022 to actually get to me, right? Because there's a backlog. A lot of people already passed their eligibility date and all that. And so it was 2016 is when I was eligible. I didn't actually have my parole board hearing until 2018.
And in 2018?
Yeah, that's when I actually had the parole board hearing.
And did it go the way you wanted it to go?
Yeah. So it did. It went the way. So at that time, I wasn't with. We didn't last at that time, right? So I wasn't with Ariel at the time. They scheduled me for the parole board hearing. I went there. Previously, let me back up just a tad. I had contacted Rabbi Senior in Irvine. My family lives in Orange County, and they were like the only I think like the only Orthodox, well, non-Chabad Orthodox shul in Orange County. And so I'm like, all right, I had the rabbi who was the chaplain there because I was the lead Jewish chapel clerk, write me like kind of a reference letter. So the rabbi didn't get us like a random letter for somebody in jail talking about, hey, I'm coming to the community, right? But I wrote him and explained. I gave like a 14-page from juvenile delinquency to Judaism sort of, in depth, about my life and the choices and why I wanted to go to, Judaism and all that. And he wrote me back and said, yeah, the community love to get know you better. The community will love to have you when you get out. So that was like a little postcard. When I got that though, I was like, I got somewhere to go, right? Like I got, and I got a lot of people who weren't necessarily encouraging, like, they're not going to accept you when you get out of jail. You're fooling yourself, right? I tell you, there's a lot of racial dynamics going on in prison too. Like, you're fooling yourself and all that. But that was a lot. So I went to the parole board and I said, this is what I want to do. This is my plan. I'm going to get out. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to become a social worker. I am going to convert to Orthodox Judaism. And I'm going to live in this particular community. And they went for it. I would say even the district attorney went there though and argued against my release. It was like, this guy's going to be a threat to public safety, right? So when they did grant it, when the parole board commission granted it, like I even thanked the district attorney, knowing that, I mean, looking at me, right, and you see me in this kind of suit and the hat and all that, but looking at me in a prison jumpsuit and tattoos all over my arms and there, right? I can imagine, right? You're worried about the community, so I thanked him for even being there and being concerned about the community. Thanked everybody. They gave me a shot, so I was actually released from prison in October 22nd, 2018. So I'm coming up on my 5-year mark.
October 22nd, 2018.
Yeah.
What's that feeling like to be out?
It's a little surreal. I think my life is still surreal. There's like so many surreal moments that I have. I got out though with like determination. I wasn't with Ariella, but we had a kid together. Mm-hmm. So, and we weren't even talking. So, and I wasn't Jewish, right? So, and then I had nothing. I didn't, I don't have a nest egg. Like, I didn't come out to like a savings or anything like that. I literally got out to absolutely nothing. Went paroled to a halfway house. So I just knew all those things I was telling the parole board were the same things I was telling my mom, was the same things I was telling my family members, people who stood by my side and showed me unconditional love, even though I kind of burnt a lot of bridges in that, I was dedicated to criminality when they were showing, but they still stuck by my side. And so I gave all these promises. And most importantly, at least I think, is I gave the promise to myself that this was what I was going to do. So it was more just like, all right, I was on a state-funded vacation. That's how I looked at it, right? I was on a 16-year state-funded vacation. Now it's time to get to work, right? That's what it's about. I had to kind of roll up my sleeves and get to work. So it was surreal, like, yes, this is freedom, but I kind of knew what lay ahead of me, and it was a lot of work. The week I got out, I contacted Rabbi Senior from Beth Jacob Irvine and told him I'm at a halfway house. I don't know how I'm gonna get to Irvine. I don't know anybody out there, right? I don't even have a job, but I'll work on that. But I'm still committed to becoming Jewish. And like a month later, I think within that first month or so, around then, I submitted my conversion application to the Based in RCC, Rabbinical Council of California, and started down that path to becoming a Yid.
We'll be right back this week's episode, but first, how are you preparing for Yom Kippur? Oh, I have the perfect, easy, best solution for you. We all know that the act of giving tzedakah is life-giving and also life-sustaining. Giving daily is a practice that protects us in the most literal way. But even if we resolve to give tzedakah every day, it's easy to miss a day, to forget, or to get distracted. Well, 70 years ago, the Lubavitcher Rebbe Zatzal, wanting to ensure that each one of us have the schus of daily tzedakah giving, established a very special fund that would guarantee we'd never miss a day. He named it Keren Hashana. The idea, you donate in amounts the number of the days in the coming year. So this year, 383 days. And Keren Hashana disperses the tzedakah on your behalf twice every day, once before Shachris and once before Mincha. This guarantees that you will not miss the mitzvah of tzedakah every single day of the year. And it's not important how much you give. Obviously, the more the merrier. The idea is to give tzedakah every day, consistency. How is the money distributed, you're asking? Well, and also, where does the money go? It goes to help needy people, single parent families, educational subsidies for children whose parents cannot afford tuition, emergency medical assistance for shluchim in crisis, and more literally life-sustaining waves. And in the past year alone, millions of dollars were distributed towards these social services. Your tzedakah is dispersed through Machne Israel, as you know, the Rebbe's organization, which is the social services arm of Chabad Lubavitch and the host organization of Keren Hashana. So join Jews all around the world and become a Keren Hashana partner. It's so simple. Be a giver every day and donate online at mykarenhashana.com. There's a link in the show notes. And we know that on Yom Kippur, we're davening and we're saying how we've changed and we're better people. Well, this is your sign from God, maybe, I don't know, that you should be giving tzedakah and helping those in need. What an easy, great opportunity. Now back to my conversation with Yehuda.
Was that process going through Beis Din difficult? I had the Hearts on who they told me actually to interview you, and we were talking about their journey with Geirus, and it sounds difficult.
It is difficult. I think I was prepped just because I'm used to, my entire adult life was just like a difficult situation. So this was just one more. Granted, I was probably had more trepidation in this than I had going into a maximum security prison, right? Going to the Beis Din, becoming Jewish, was definitely more terrifying than going to a, maximum security prison. But I would say, right, I went, the head of the Beis Din, Rabbi Avraham Union, knew I just got out of prison. He read the Juvenile Delinquency to Judaism, a little short biography that I sent him. He knew I was on parole. I was at a halfway house. I wasn't living in a Jewish community. I wasn't even with the Jewish woman who was the mother of my child. And yet he gave me a chance. He gave me an opportunity. He wasn't judgmental at all to me. So my experience with the Beis Din was when I say pleasant, it was a process, right? Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work. And granted, I started becoming, making myself familiar with Judaism since like 2010. So me meeting him in 2018, yes, I hadn't lived in a Jewish community yet, but it wasn't just like out the blue. Yeah, I had a born again experience of wanting to, wanting to be Jewish. And he understood like, oh yeah, probably was a tough sort of experience in prison for you to walk around with a kippah, and don, I used to don my talis and tefillin, inside of prison. Right. And so, with all those sort of, shenanigans going around there. So I was able to do it in there. I think in the free world, it would be a little bit less challenging. So I don't know if that was going through his head, but everybody on the Beis Din seemed like they gave me a chance and they weren't judgmental about the situation. They wanted to see, right? I think that more than anything, it's not about whether you're sincere, right? Because a lot of people go there with sincerity. That's not what they're really judging, right? But whether you could acclimate into a Jewish community, right? Like that, I think that's what that matters most to them. And so they gave me a chance. I ended up moving to Irvine, a Breslover Chassid, Lee Weissman, who decided to say, hey, he invited me for over a bowl of soup, contacted me on Facebook while I lived at the halfway house. This random guy, super long payas, just like down here, super beer. This had a shrine on, right? Like I was like, hey, you want to come over for a bowl of soup? An old hydro would have been like, nah, who's this guy, right? But this new me, right? Was like, let's go. I'm trying new things now, right? This is a new me. I went out there and he's like, hey, you want to rent a room here? I'm having there's an Israeli kid going to college. He's going to be done this semester. You want to move in here? And he allowed me to move in the house. So it's kind of like we were talking about a conversion program. I had it was like immersion, right? Like I was living in a house with a from Jewish man. And it made the process so much more easier and I would say meaningful as well.
At that point in your life, did you think that your relationship with your now current wife wouldn't happen again? Or was it like, we'll get back together eventually?
If she lived in California and I had the ability to see her easily, because logistically, I at the time, like how I was, when I got out of my first job, I was washing dishes, making $10.50 an hour. Like the guy next to me didn't even speak English. So I'm just washing dishes. It was a rough time, right? I couldn't talk to the person I was working with. I didn't know I started going to school. I immediately enrolled in like 21 units of college. That's how much I needed left to graduate with my bachelor's. But I didn't have any way to take care of a family or even, right? But I knew I held hope, right? I believe, back then, just like now, I believe in Hashem, right? And I knew that whatever was going to happen was supposed to happen, but I had to do my part. Right. I had to do my part. I had to cling to Hashem. I had to, do as many mitzvahs as I can. I had to be on this journey. I had to get a job. I had to be responsible because it wasn't just me showing that I could be a responsible Jewish man. It was me. I could be a responsible adult, period. Right. I had no sort of resume of responsibility whatsoever.
You were never an adult out of prison.
No. Briefly, right? I got out of juvenile hall when I was like 18 and a half, right? You're young when you're using halves, 18 and a half. And I went and I caught the case like soon as I turned 19, like right after I turned 19. So yeah, and I was living with my mom before then. So yeah, I didn't have any sort of responsibilities.
So at what point did you get back with your wife?
So I got out in October 22nd. She reached out to me. So the first day I got out of jail, so my sister still had a relationship with my wife, and my mom did. They went out to Canada, visited our son we had together. And so the first day I got out, as soon as I got in the car with my sister and my mom picked me up. I told my sister, hey, message Ariella and give her my number and just let her know any sort of way I could support and help. Here's my number, right? And so I just didn't hear anything, right? In December, she called me and we started like tentatively just more talking logistics about me seeing my son and like what that looks like, but not necessarily getting back together. But over time, and there was like, she's like, no, I'm not going to talk to you. The rabbi senior helped. He was like behind the scenes. I didn't know he was sending emails. I didn't find out till like afterward. He was behind the sines, right? And even the Beis Din was like rooting, like maybe you'll get back with her, right? I remember Rabbi Byron was like, yeah, maybe maybe you get back with her. I'm like, Rabbi Byron, I just told you it's over with. There's no chance. She's not coming back in the picture, right? And then I think towards the summer of that following year, like we were like talking like we're gonna try to make it work. Still didn't know like what that would look like and the feasibility of it even happening, right? But we were going to try to make it work. And I seen her in person, and my son in person for the first time, and my daughter, right? Because I only had seen her on video before that in person. I think the first time in October of 2019.
I love that you're referring to your, officially stepdaughter as your daughter. I think that's very sweet. Was it a point of contention of, you're, I guess, leading, you come from, a world where Judaism's not even a thing, and you somehow get hooked onto it and you're liking it and you're growing in that path. And then I guess your wife, she actually came from a Orthodox background. She was kind of like leaving it in a certain way. Was that a point of contention of why you weren't together, or that didn't really play such a big role there?
No, I just think, again, as one, like, I had a kid while I was in prison, right? So I wasn't acting appropriately, wasn't doing things, and that made the situation harder, right? Like how are we going to do this, right? You got one kid, you already have a daughter living over here. Like, how are you going to move out here? How are you even going to make that happen? Like, I didn't even have a life established. Does that make sense? Am I even doing the right thing in this situation by wanting to be together? Just is it possible, right? So there's a lot. She was raised from and she knew, though, that if she had a partner, right, that could kind of ease her back into it, so to speak. Not like she felt like she didn't want to be like super pressured, but she knew like that's what she wanted. She didn't like leave the community. Like, her brother's doing his 10-year smicha program at the he's out here in New York doing the 10 years. Her sister is from her dad's from, right? Like, it's she was still connected, and it had a lot of relationships with Rebbeim, where she was at. It was just hard. It was like, there's a lot to do. Like, living as a From Yid is not simply as From Yid, there's a lot of like responsibilities. And then, she had some tattoos. She thought she was going to get judged going back, right? And so she was very fearful about going back because she thought she was going to be judged, right? And here's me saying like, nah, you ain't going to be judged, right? Like, you're saying that you're dedicated to the, Hashem, and you want to follow his mitzvahs. Like, people are going to praise you. Like, no, you don't. How do you know? How do you know? You don't even, you've never even been in a Jewish community. I was raised in the Jewish community. So, all that, there was just a lot. There's a lot of emotions involved. There's a lot of history of just us. I met her in 2014, right? I got out in 2018, and we were together for years while I was in prison. And I only seen her once a year. She'd fly out from Canada. So we had a strong relationship, and yet we didn't really have a relationship, right? Because how much of a relationship can you have when it's just seeing a person in a prison visiting room with guards, walking around, once a year, right? Like, so it was just a lot. It was a lot. But my community, the Jewish community, kind of facilitated us and made it possible for us to, get back together. And I think that made it, that's what made it possible.
It's really beautiful. I saw in an interview, I think it was with the Hearts when they interviewed you for Aish, that you mentioned the line of something along the lines of like, you've gotten more anti-Semitic remarks than racist remarks, something along those lines. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So just in my general experience. So growing up, like overt racism, but I feel like kids can be very mean sometimes and very good at finding what's going to get under your skin most. And that's what they sort of pick at, right? So I had very much overt racism there, like, call me the N-word and all types of stuff, right? Getting bullied at certain times. But as I got older, people were super respectful in prison, though. You might not understand, like, yes, they would stab you, right? But very polite in between, like wars and conflicts, right? And got out. Wasn't overt. It wasn't like, you're black or you're this and that. I got a lot of sort of casual anti-Semitic remarks or different sort of things connected to the Jewish aspect of it. I got a lot in prison, right? Because, that's the nature of what prison is. And then I faced it. I seen it a lot, going, out here in the free world, and a lot. I'm on social media, right? Social media, I don't know. It's like everybody just like this. That's their thing to do, right? You post, I'm proud to be Jewish, and then all of a sudden, you know, you get all type of free Palestine. Hey, go back to Europe, or this and that, or you're like this like crazy stuff that doesn't even make sense. If you know what it means to be Jew, you understand like a lot of the stuff that people are saying against Jewish people, and it's happened throughout the history, right? Always for different reasons, right? And so yeah, that's and I think a lot of it is people might not necessarily see me as, oh, all right, well, this guy's just a black guy too. I could say this, and it might not, you know, resonate as anti-Semitism as much. And I think a lot of times people are unaware how casual anti-Semitism has become, where it's just like, get over it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's wild. That's really wild. So I want to talk about what your life looks like now, right? You're Dr. Yehuda Pryce, and you're telling me a little on the way of like how busy you are with your jobs. I want you to tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. So when I was in prison, the most you can get at the time, like laws have changed. I think they do Pell Grants now and all that, right? The most I could get was an AA. So I got an AA while I was in prison, and you can get a bachelor's at the time, California, but you had to pay for it out of your own pocket. I was making 11 cents an hour, so wasn't really able to like afford classes like that. But again, my loving family and friends were able to put together sort of money here and there, as opposed to me getting food packages, or I'll be like, just give me a class. So when I got released, I had about 21 units shy. I took all 21 units that the next semester. So January 2019 enrolled. I had 21 units. I finished it, graduated with my bachelor's in sociology with an emphasis in social welfare. Immediately applied for a University of Southern California Master of Social Work program. Just kind of like did that as fast as possible. So I graduated with my master's. Then I immediately, and I had to talk my way into it because they wanted you to have at least 3 years post MSW experience to get into the doctorate program, but I was able to talk my way into that. And so I graduated my doctorate in social work as well. So now what I currently do is I work for Defy Ventures as a senior director of national mental health and well-being programs. We have like a sort of an entrepreneurial program. We get different sort of people in the business world that come in and help give business coaching, but there's a sort of mental health, emotional wellness aspect, people really taking accountability for their actions and preparing them for meaningful work trajectories once they get out. And so we have an inside out program, so to speak, that we help them inside, they get out, and I sort of run programs for that. And I help design programs and give resources and counseling for that. And I'm also a clinical social worker with a young adult court in Orange County, which is cool. I think it's only one of 8 such courts in the country, but we're going in that direction. So it's been expanded since it started. Essentially, I work with transitional age youth between the ages of 18 and 25 who have been arrested. It can't be for a violent crime or a gang related crime, but they get arrested. I might go into the county jail, interview them. And if they're eligible, I work with them, help them get a job, mental health interventions, transportation, get their life in order. I work collaboratively with a district attorney, same district attorney's office that said I was not safe to be out in society, right? We're on good terms now.
It's the ultimate stuff of like, yeah, I'm not good. I'm going to help you guys actually.
Yeah, but I always thought about it. I remember seeing social workers come to me when I was in juvenile hall, and I'm like, who's this person? They don't know what I'm going through. How am I? Come on now, right? I'm out here. I'm facing gang warfare out here in the streets, and you're going to tell me some little thing you learned in a textbook? No, right? And so part of me wanting to go into this field was like, look, I know what I needed, right? And maybe everybody doesn't need the exact same I needed, but I know that I could use my lived experience to actually help people in a substantive way, right? And yes, it gives meaning, but it's also, it's different when you design programs. Are you thinking about legislative policies? Do they work? Do they not work, right? Do you see the change? I could actually see the change in individuals' lives that were headed down the same sort of path that I was in it. And so it's that, I don't know, it's when I'm still doing teshuva, right? Like, I feel like this is definitely like a key part of that teshuva.
Okay, we'll be right back. But last message of the podcast, and the best part of the podcast is still coming up. But I need to tell you about an epic adventure. Are you ready for it? And it's with Hatzalah Ir. When the clock is ticking and the miles seem endless, who comes to the rescue? Yep, you guessed it. It's Hatzalah Ir. Their motto, mission ready, always, and they actually mean it. Now, as we soar into this fresh new year, we're embarking on a thrilling mission of a different kind. We're calling on to you to join us in making history. Introducing the Hatzalah Sefer Torah campaign. You may have heard me say about before, but now we're getting cooking. Picture this, Sefer Torah safely nestled aboard a life-saving aircraft, offering protection of the highest form as we race against time to help those in need. And guess what? You can be a superhero in this epic story too. For just $18 per letter, you can etch your name into this fabric of this incredible journey. Join us in creating a legacy of hope, unity, and support. Let's come together and fill every page of this Sefer Torah with love, dedication, and the promise of a brighter future. So go ahead and hurry up because every second counts. Let's make this mission unforgettable. Go ahead and visit hatzalahr.org/Torah and be part of the Hatzalah Sefer Torah campaign today. Together, we'll keep soaring to new heights. It's $18. You could go to Hashem this Rosh Hashanah, this Yom Kippur, and say, Hashem, I want to be a part of your mission to help save Klal Yisrael. And obviously they're giving a Sefer Torah to Hatzalah, but essentially that money's going towards helping Hatzalah function and go ahead. So we're not asking for much here. Go ahead and use just $18. Obviously, if you want to do more. And we would really love your participation. And last but not least, I've been getting too many compliments. You know what? I'll take as many as I can get with my new threads at Twillery. Basically, we have partnered with Twillery and they are just making me look like a mensch because I have notoriously looked like a schlump. And my wife, I kid you not, last night, she's like, by the way, do they make like these clothes in women's? I don't think they do yet, but maybe, hey, folks at Twillery, we got to get for my wife and my daughter, some Twillery threads. I'm right now rocking their blazer. This Rosh Hashanah, I'm wearing their Twillery suits. I have an ear suit coming. That's like really, it's amazing. I'm wearing their polo. Actually, fun, cool colors. I've never worn plum before, but I'm wearing it. I'm wearing their nice gray stretchy pants, which my wife said, Yaakov, we need to get rid of all the other pants you've had that's not Twillery and just keep these. I'm a fan. I'm even wearing their socks. I'm wearing Nike shoes, but my wife's, I promise, she's like, hey, do they make shoes? I'm like, I don't think so. I have to check. I don't know if they make shoes. But if you want to upgrade your wardrobe and just get clothes that last, clothes that look good, but most importantly, clothes that feel good, go ahead and go to Twillery. But you're also going to get Chai, which is $18 off when you use code word INSPIRE when you spend over $139 and you're a new customer. So go ahead, go to Twillery.com, use code word INSPIRE and peruse around, look to see, maybe you want a blazer, maybe you want a new polo, maybe you want new pants. They're the best pants in the world. They make amazing, fantastic clothing, and I highly recommend, and go ahead and support our supporters. Use Twillery.com, enter the new year looking the best you could and feeling the best you can. Code word INSPIRE. Now, back to this week's episode with Yehuda.
It's such a smart way to do tshuva, like taking your challenge and your experience and saying, how could I help others going through that pain, challenge, whatever it is, like to go through prison or the background of how they got into prison and to like help them excel and just get past that. It's so smart. It's so intuitive.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I mean, again, I do it more so. I don't take, there's no like no ego or pride in it because it's like I did so much wrong. I hurt so many people, like my family, my friends, everybody. Like, I didn't honor my parents. I didn't honor my community. I did a lot of damage, and I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? That's how I kind of feel impelled, right? Like I didn't go into social work for the money. I didn't get like, I'm gonna be a social worker, big money in social work, right? Did it because like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Mm-hmm. Hashem lined up my life this particular way. I made choices, right? And now he's giving me the opportunity to rectify it on some sort of level.
What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh, worst advice. You're asking a person who's been mentored by gangbangers and drug dealers, right? So I won't give you a specific advice. I would just say that I was raised by, as I told you, not raised, but raised in the streets by criminal mentors that really showed me how to excel at being a gangster, right? Told me how to do things that what I saw as good advice at the time was a different sort of ethical paradigm that I was operating under, right? But that I realized that really took me away from Hashem, right? Really separated me from Hashem, right? And any advice that separates you from Hashem, from the Creator, from what it means, from your purpose in life, I think that's horrible advice, right? Even if it makes you feel good, even if it makes you deal with some insecurities and whatever troubles you're going, even if there's like financial success connected to it, right? If it takes you away from Hashem, it's just bad advice. And I received a lot of bad advice for a large portion of my life.
What about the flip side? What's the best advice you ever received?
I'm gonna keep it simple, right? I'm gonna connect it back to what I said before, right? Shavisi Hashem, right? That I keep Hashem before me always. So David HaMelech, right, gave me this great advice in the Tehillim, right? And to me, it matters most, right? Because everywhere I'm at, I know if I keep Hashem before me, right? Like maybe I'm responding in a way that's a little too, too smart alecky, and I'm putting somebody down. Maybe I'm about to do some lashon hara. Like maybe Hashem's before me at all times, right? Is this person that's being a total jerk to me, and I feel righteous in my indignation and anger? Am I responding as if Hashem is before me at all times? So that sort of timeless advice from David HaMelech, right, sticks with me and guides me, right? I'm definitely not saying I'm perfect, or that as if I act in all instances as if Hashem is before me at all times, but that has been this like at the forefront of my sort of Jewish experience and Jewish transformation and the way I want to continue in my life.
Out of the 613 mitzvahs, is there one that you feel like you connect with more than the other mitzvahs?
One I connect with more. So I would say tefillin, right? And I'll say tefillin. So I remember, so there's the little backstory I touched on a little bit earlier is that, I done my talis and tefillin in prison, and I was donning my tefillin, right? I want you to kind of transport to my environment. This wasn't a shul. There wasn't this forum all around and Rebbeim and other Yid, and it was people shooting up heroin. It was white supremacists walking around with swastikas on them, and me in my talis and my tefillin, right, connecting and binding myself to Hashem, right? And when I got out and I started going through the conversion program, I remember there was an incident. I say incident, it's not an incident, but there was a time that I remember somebody was trying to call me for Aliyah. He was in a regular shul and he kept on. I had my head down, like, I'm not the guy. I'm not there yet, right? And then everybody was trying to be, everybody's trying to be a mention about it, like not try to make a scene, like move it on to somebody else, right? And I remember the rabbi coming to me like, hey, you've been doing this for a while. I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, yeah. Typically, when you're going through the, Garris, you don't typically wear tefillin. I'm not, pressuring you to do it either. I'm like, all right, no, Rabbi, look I'm not trying to be the, I'll stop, right? And I felt a loss when I stopped, right? Even though I know okay, maybe I wasn't supposed to do it, but it meant so much to me, when I was surrounded by a lot of darkness to connect to Hashem, to be able to connect to Hashem. So I had to stop. And then I remember, coming up from the mikvah, right? Finishing, Baruch Hashem, finishing the Garris process. And I remember Rabbi Union like, all right, you're obligated now. What haven't you done? You gotta go down to tefillin now, right? It's daytime, go down to tefillin. And so I remember driving away from the mikvah. I pulled over to like a side street, hopped out and down to tefillin, right? And just, that was probably like the most significant time in my life, right? Prior to me being married, don't want my wife to look at this and say anything, right? But yeah, like being able to connect with Hashem, like it's such a sacred act, and it's a physical act. Like a lot of times, like you don't see Hashem, right? So it's like very abstract. A lot of things, the source of all being, the master of the universe, right? It's like, it's abstract, but this gives me something concrete I could do. And then I also know that I'm not just I'm connected to Hashem, but then I look around the shul and I just see all the other Yid, and like, we've been doing this for thousands of years, right? Like, and so to me, that's like the most meaningful mitzvah that I just look forward to do. I know what it meant to be able to do it and not be able to do it, and now be able to do it as a Yid, right? Like it's just, every time I don it, it's very something special to me.
That's really beautiful. I'm on this, and I've spoken about it before, and I even told you on the car right here, I'm on this tefillin group chat. We take selfies of ourselves wearing tefillin, and I'm going to share this with them. They're going to eat up this because it's so
Hey,
mechazik.
can I? How do I get in this?
I know. I'll send you a link. You'll join. You're
I just
welcome.
told you it's my favorite mitzvah.
Yeah,
You
I know. You're welcome, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Whichever men want to join, they're welcome. If you could sit down with one person from history for an hour, schmooze it up with them, who'd it be?
You know, Jewish history goes back a long time, right? And there's a lot of just great giants, right? That I would probably just be fearful to even be in the presence of. I think right now I would say I'm attracted to particularly the Chavetz Chaim. I would probably want to be with them. I know how hard it is to. He wrote a couple different sort of safers. He did, on like Jews that were in sort of difficult circumstances. Like I think like in the Polish army, like you can't be fully observant. How do you do that, right? If you're away from a Jewish community, how to do that? So that resonates with me. Like how, as a Jew in prison, how do you do that, right? Obviously, I don't plan to go back to prison or anything like that, so I'm not trying to get research or anything like that, right? So that means something. And then I'm doing I do a Hilchos Shabbos program, and Mishnah Berurah is the key safer we use, right? And so that's meaningful. And then just heading into Rosh Hashanah, right? Like you got to be very mindful of your speech, right? What am I going to say? What's going to come out with my lips? And so being able to be in front of the giant, and he was humble. He was just so humble, right? I would think it would be the Chavetz Chaim.
That's a beautiful answer. Is there a story in your life, or maybe a story that you read or heard that really inspires you, gives you strength?
I'm gonna give you another tefillin story. All right.
Okay, well, let's fill in chat, guys.
I'm really trying to get in this
Marcus,
WhatsApp chat.
Avrami, they're gonna get involved.
I'm really trying to get in this WhatsApp chat. Right? No.
You're in.
So I remember. So actually, I want to give a special shout out to Aleph Institute. Right? They were like, so I was I wasn't Jewish, but I was the lead, lead clerk of the Jewish chapel, right? And so I was responsible like Jewish programming and getting everything together. And so I had to deal with the Aleph Institute a lot of times to make sure, the Jews inside prison got everything they needed, especially for Yom Tovim and whatever they needed. And so I remember Papa Doc saying, so there was Papa Doc and Baby Doc. Baby Doc was 70-something years old. That's why he was called Baby, and Papa Doc was in his 80s, right? So that's where they got right? They were doctors on the street. So that's the doc, hence the doc, right? And remember asking him, right? Because he told me, Papa Doc told me like, yeah, he didn't grow up he wasn't like religious, had a lot of exposure, right? And he said that he was in a riot in one of these prisons, right? Because I was asking him like, how did he start, donning talis and tefillin and all that, remember? And he had a talis, and he was in a riot, and they lost it. It got lost. I don't know who lost. It was gone, right? They came back, they clear everybody out. People get pepper sprayed. They bring back in your properties all in disarray. Then have a talis. The prison, he didn't even know about Aleph Institute. He didn't know about Aleph Institute. The prison knew that that's who they're going to call. If they needed something Jewish, they're going to call them. So they called and they said he lost a talis. So not only did they give him a talis, they gave him a tefillin. A set of tefillin. He had never donned tefillin before. And since he got that tefillin, right, he was just so like taken aback. He donned tefillin every single day since that, right? And so knowing what binds us to Hashem and this special relationship as a Jew that we have, right? Even in this, again, like Jews, we care so much about Klal Yisrael and how we're all connected, and that sort of the responsibility for others, that even when they're in prison, locked away from the rest of the world, from the Jewish community, right? That we still have the ability to connect with them as Jews. And also as a Jew, we have the ability to connect with Hashem, right? And so that was especially meaningful to know that was like the Jewish story that really resonated with me in prison.
That's really beautiful. Before I get to my last question, I just want to reference your second son, I think Zidan. Am I saying his name properly?
Zidan Mordechai Lev.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to remember all of that. But Zidan, so we don't have to get into all the details, but he was in the hospital for...
So that was actually...
Yochanan?
Yochanan. Yeah.
I'm mixing it up. But Yochanan also has 3 names.
Yochanan Hanach Mendel.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So sorry. Yochanan, it was 2 years ago you said this?
No, he's 2 years old now. It happened, so he was born in 2021. So it happened like at the end of 2021.
Got it. Okay, fine. So, okay. Let's backtrack. So Yochanan, And we don't have to get so into details. Like you said something that like really struck me before when we were eating, that Yochanan was, they weren't even sure exactly what was wrong with him.
Yeah.
But you said that was the scariest time in your life.
Yeah. I like to say like, yeah, I survived maximum security prison and it was nothing. It was like, like I was able, I had this big bad bravado, this tough guy exterior that at least I knew now, even that's not me anymore. No, I survived prison. Right. I survived being incarcerated for over 16 years. I've been incarcerated. I've been separated from my family, my friends, the love of my life, my child. Right. Like, I got through that. I'm a Jew now. You know what? I think I'm built to withstand anything that, Hashem throws my way. That's at least the mentality I had. And then next thing you know, right, our son's taken to the hospital and he ended up being in the hospital for over 4 months, right? Doctors didn't know what was going on. They found out what was going on, but they didn't know what was the cause and how to treat it. And it was bad seeing him get blood transfusions every other day, right? My wife just balling up in tears. Now she's spending, it was COVID, so it was only one person allowed at a time overnight. She's staying at the hospital. All of a sudden, I didn't have any kids now. I have multiple kids. I'm taking to school, getting ready, going to parent teacher conferences, but I'm doing all this other stuff, right? And that was the hardest sort of experience that I've ever been through. Like nothing in my life prepared me for that. And all I could do at that moment, right, is like just dive into Hashem. That's like all I had in that moment. I realized like all I had was Hashem. So even though, yes, I had tough times when I'm in prison, I don't want to paint the picture as if it was just like, yeah, I'm a gangster. It's all good, right? There was definitely some sad times and despairing over a future that wasn't going to come into being. But this floored me, but Hashem, and not only that, right? So Hashem and Hashem through Hashem, right? High Lifeline, they came in. Like I never even heard of them before, right? Somebody like I think my wife's sister, like, hey, contact these people, right? They were coming through with meals. They were delivering a meal because I can't cook. I cook. I was cooking ramen noodles in prison, right? Like I don't have any, any cooking skills, right? They were bringing food for me and my children. They were sending deliveries or having people sometimes drive out, right? And deliver a food to the hospital, right? So my wife would be able to have it there. Like they were helping at Yom Tovim, right? They're, we're going to not spare you from me taking the kids, right? Trying to make us have some sort of semblance of normality in this craziness, right? That was the hardest time of my life. Baruch Hashem, like he's good, Baruch Hashem, Yochanan's good. He's back. He's healthy. Just, but yeah, that was just the hardest time of my life. It was the hardest time of my family's life. And I'm not going to walk around and say that I'm prepared and ready for anything. I just know that I do have Hashem. And so I'm just going to cleave to him as much as I possibly can.
Wow. Okay, so for the last question, it's kind of a mixture of an idea, and if you could either, I guess, look at me, or you could even look at that camera if you want, because it's addressed to the audience. But if you could go back and talk to your younger self, / if someone is going through life now and maybe they feel like, or maybe they are a gangster and they feel like, listen, it's a nice idea to think for me to return and to get back, or to even become someone great or someone bigger than I believe what I could be, and to really connect to Hashem. Like I missed that point in my life. I can never get back. What advice would you give to them?
It's a good question. I would say you're put on this. You are put on this earth for a reason. What is that reason? You might not know yourself, right? Right. I know as a yid, it's to be to serve Hashem, right? But what does that mean? What sort of tangibility? What sort of import does it have in your everyday life, especially when you're dealing with whatever struggles and whatever poor choices you may have made, whatever has happened to you, right? But every single day you have the opportunity to make that a meaningful, purposeful day. And what might not be readily apparent in any particular day, right? It adds up. Day day after day of you connecting to Hashem, in any way you can, whether it's mitzvos, whether it's through helping out a fellow yid, improving the world, improving other conditions, and you might not see it bear fruit in your life, right? But there's always an opportunity to do more and to elevate yourself. And I would just continue to do that. And the more you do, right? I think there's a statement attributed in the Talmud attributed to Hashem saying, essentially, would they forsake me but keep my mitzvos, and with the understanding that if you keep on doing the mitzvos, eventually you're going to go back to that place that you want to be, the place that brings that sort of that meaning into your life, that purpose and what you were meant to be. And there's not a lot of fanfare, right? You might not get invited on podcasts, right? Inspiration for the nation, right? You might not be there, right? But you have the ability to affect not only your own life, right, but others who are in your orbit, right? I was able to change my life around, and a lot of people don't get that opportunity. If you have that opportunity, right, you could affect your family, your friends, and so many other people. Why not live a life for that, if not for anything else?
Well, someone who was formerly known as Hydro and formerly known as Omar, but now and forever known as Yehuda, thank you very much for flying here and doing this.
Thank you, Yaakov, for having me.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this week's episode. If you got this far on YouTube or X or wherever you're watching or listening to this, go ahead and drop the word wow. I think it's the most common word I've ever said on a podcast, which I think I said a lot on this episode. Yehuda is someone that if I was writing a story about life, I don't think he's someone that I would even be able to make up. He is so unique and so authentic and wow, what an incredible person. It's funny. I think we reference it in it. On my way, by the way, thank you for helping our sponsors, because when you help our sponsors, we can fly people like Yehuda out all the way from California, flew in and flew right back. I mean, he's a busy person. He has a family to get to. But when you go ahead and help our sponsors like Karen Ashana and Esrik Shopper and Hatzalah Ear and Twillery, when you go ahead and help our sponsors, you go ahead and help us get fantastic, incredible people like Yehuda. So I picked him up with my Prius. I don't know if you guys know yet that I have a Prius and I drive a Prius, and I'm proud about it. And I'm driving with him. We're driving by Young Israel, Lawrence Cedarhurst. Bam! On the side of the road, I get a flat tire. He's literally in here, like in New York for like, I don't know, like 9 hours, and most of those hours are sleep time. Of course, we're delayed. Special thank you to Javier for helping us. I'll post a picture of, they didn't want to be in it. Here's a picture of me and Yehuda just on the side of the road. And it's like Gamzlu Tova, and it took a while, but thank you, Javier, and thank you to the special people that were there that helped. Again, I even took a video with them. They're like, no, don't boast us. So I won't. But I think this episode and by Yehuda and I think we slept like 3 hours that night. Thanks to my in-laws that Yehuda stayed there. I actually told my brother-in-laws, I'm like, guys, heads up. If you see like this big guy downstairs sleeping, like covered in tattoos, he's a good guy. He's my friend. Don't worry. And they're like, oh, okay. But we got in so late, they didn't even see him. But Yehuda is someone that I particularly wanted to release this during the Aseret Yemei Tshuva. Could be, chances are you're watching this after that. But it's, you could do Tshuva throughout the year. And I think he's someone that it was the epitome of someone who lived a life and said, like, you would say, like, there's no hope for this guy. Like he's in jail. He's scary. He kind of destroyed his life. There's no coming back. And he's someone that says, you know what? I want to be not just someone in society that's helpful, but like, how do I internalize it and change myself? So no matter where you are, who you are, it's never too late. Just go ahead and do the tshuva today. Obviously give tzedakah and hello to beautiful organizations. If you want to change how you feel, it's by the way you dress. That's a great way to start. Go ahead and use Twillery. And if you want to perform the most beautiful mitzvahs in the world, go ahead and use Esrik Shopper. We have an incredible, very heavy episode coming next week. I'm so excited. And if you got this far in the interview and you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and I'll leave a link in the show notes. You may enjoy the conversation with Eliza Bulow, and share this episode with someone that you think will get inspired by it. Till next time, l'chaim. Living l'chaim.